Hello, everyone, and welcome to season 6 of Vulnerability Time. I am your host, Josias Abriel. It's good to be back. Before we start on the episode, I hope you enjoy, but before we start, please make sure to leave a good review of the podcast, whether on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you're listening to this podcast platform. It does help. Please make sure to follow or share the podcast, or do both. That'll be great. Also, any books of mine that you want to purchase, they're in the link below in the episode description. So, with that being said, enjoy the show and thank y'all so much for y'all support. It truly means a lot. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Vulnerability Time. I am your host, Josias Abriel. Do y'all like the new cover art? I changed the cover art. I said I want something different for a different season. You know, we have different guests on that are starring. I was like, you know what? Let's do something different. How do y'all feel about it? Y'all like it? Is it too bright? If it is, I'll change it and we'll do something else. But I thought it was very cute. With us today, we have a new guest, Alejandro. Alejandro, so I know we attempted to record an episode last week. I'm just, for the theme of vulnerability time, we're just going to be open and honest and vulnerable. But there was technical issues on my end because I cheaped out when I bought a new laptop. And so you're going to have to reintroduce yourself again for the third time. For the third time, Alejandro, tell us a little bit about you, your major, your minor. You mentioned some distinguishments from your high school, all that good stuff, and then I'll ask you why sociology. Spoiler alert. Go ahead, Alejandro. Take it away.
So, hi everyone. My name is Alejandro Rodarte, and as
Period.
Josias kind of. Oh,
No, I said period. The way you said your name, I was like, yes,
oh.
period.
And as Josias mentioned, I am a student of sociology. Um, I guess where this all really started was that Josias was the TA for one of my classes, and we very quickly hit it off as good friends and good buddies. And ever since like the third week of knowing Josias, they were like, "You need to come on the podcast." So here I am, being held against my will, appearing on this
Yes.
podcast. Um, Jokes aside, I'm very excited to talk to you all. This is something that I've been looking forward to, and something that I think can allow a place for vulnerability is something that's often not discussed and something that is often seen as something to hide. So I think this provides a great platform for that.
Yes. And so you okay, so tell us a little bit about because sociology wasn't your first major. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, that's correct. I came into university as a physics major with a minor in sociology, thanks to a really incredible class that I took when I was in high school. I was enrolled in the early college program, so that meant that I could earn my associates and a couple extra credits whilst getting my high school diploma. So I came into university already with my associates. Fun fact: my first full-time semester at a university was the last semester of my senior year. So I've been in the trenches for a little while now, but I was a physics major for 3 whole semesters, and while I definitely enjoyed my time there, I did feel a stronger pull towards sociology and, in general, the social sciences. Part of that is sort of like the general community and vibe around physics. I think there's a lot of structural inequities and the direction in which the field as a whole is going into that I wouldn't want to contribute to. But on a sort of more personal level, I just felt, I still love it and I still do. Like I have an especially deep affinity for astronomy and general, physics as a whole. but I just felt a stronger pull towards sociology because of the general times we're in, I suppose, wanting to create more of a difference in the world through studying the social world and understanding how and why we're in the situations that we're in.
Yes. Hashtag social scientists. That's right. I love that. Um, okay. So, thanks, Alejandro. So, today we'll be discussing. Here are the three topics, folks. Are we more good than bad? Question mark. You'll still be human throughout the whole process. And we need the past for our future. Hmm. I'm excited to see what Alejandro has to say to this. So let's start with we need the past. What do you want to start with, Alejandro?
I think, all of these topics are connected in a way
Ooh.
that made me choose them in the first place. So if you want to start with, we need the past for the future, I'm totally down with that.
Okay, fabulous. So let's start with not that. Let's start. I'm just kidding. Yeah, let's start with we need the past for our future. Alejandro, why does that speak to you? Why choose that topic? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the first and most obvious thing is, as a sociologist in training, I guess, I'm not giving myself the label just yet, but as someone who views the world through a sociological lens, it's undeniable, the ramifications on a structural level that the past has on our day-to-day lives. I think there are many systems at play that have historical roots that do influence the way that we live our lives, and I think on a much more personal level, beyond that, that's also the case. I I've been lucky enough to be raised by three generations of women: my mother, my grandmother, and my sister. And through them, I've been able to sort of see how their teachings, the past lives on through them, if that makes any sense. Sort of like their past experiences and the way that they teach me and the way that they raised me and brought me up was shaped by their past, how to interact with women, how to be kind, how to be considerate, how to be a team player. All these things are shaped by their past. And in specific, not to like single any one of them out, as I do appreciate and love all of them equally, but I can't deny my sister had a very large impact on me as well. She was born with a disability. She has bilateral clubfoot, and because of that, ever since she was born, she's been disabled in various ways and had to go through a lot of surgeries throughout her lifetime. But just looking at her, you wouldn't know that. And she is the strongest person anyone will ever meet. She's an incredibly bright, kind, caring, considerate, funny, smart person. And I'm not saying necessarily, like her, if the surgeries didn't happen or if like she didn't have to go through that hardship, that wouldn't have happened. I'm sure she would have been the exact same amazing person, but they made her stronger. And I think she views it the same way, that it's like, this was a horrible, terrible experience. It sucked, especially having to go through this outside of your own control. But at the same time, you can use that bad time, that bad energy, those hardships, and forge yourself from them.
Yeah. So, what would you say when okay, so basically what I'm also hearing for that is like the past has a purpose. It is important because I um have been around growing up a lot of I would say like toxic positivity, and people's like,
Mm.
oh, just let go of the past, like get over it, when really maybe the past does serve a purpose. Maybe we're not supposed to just get over it. What would you say about that?
I completely agree. And I forget where I heard this from, so don't attribute this to me. But Do you ever have like those nights where you can't sleep just because like you have like a really bad memory or like a really cringy memory popping
Been
up from
there.
like when you were like, yeah, 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 right? And that happens to me all the time. But then I'm thinking, what I think about that in that moment is like, well, you know what? If I'm able to cringe at that now and like say, ooh, what was I thinking? Or like, that was horrible. Or like, oh my God, that was so stupid. That shows growth. You know, it's like we might not like the past. The past may suck. It may be a dark time. But if we're able to look back on it and say, what were we thinking? Or, you know, some sort of positive outcome, that's good because it shows that we have grown as people.
Mm.
There are so many situations that I'm too embarrassed to share here that keep me up at night. But what puts me back to bed is thinking that I'm never going to do those again. And I know that the hard way for some of them, but for some of them, it's just sort of growing up and getting past that.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. I agree, Alejandro. Okay, and then this brings me to our next topic. You'll still be human throughout the process. What does that mean? What does that mean to you?
This is what I was sort of getting at when I said they were all linked, where it feels like that's almost an extension of, you know, the past leads to the future, or the importance of it. But being human throughout the process, I think, is something that is especially important to remember now. For those that don't know, or I don't know how long this will be until it's uploaded, but we are recording this a month out of the presidential inauguration. And I just feel like since then, that idea has gotten more and more powerful. And I know, you know, it sucks. I'd imagine 95% of the people, if not more, that listen to this probably have the exact same feelings that I do on that past election. But at the same time, I think it's important to sort of not lose control of yourself in a way that it is an easy response to freak out, to lose all hope, to give up.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not necessarily the human response, you know? That the human response is to keep on fighting, to be tenacious, to not stand down in the face of vitriol, hate, bigotry, what have you. And it's hard. It's particularly hard this time around for a lot of people. And, you know, um, through my access of privilege, you know, as a male, as a able-bodied person, um, I can't necessarily imagine what other marginalized groups are going through, or people that, you know, have that double jeopardy, to use a sociological term, where they have more and more identities that are oppressed.
Mm-hmm. The
But
intersectionality.
it's
Yeah.
going to be hard. Yes, Kimberly Crenshaw and the idea of intersectionality. Um, it is going to be difficult, but, you know, throughout that time, remember that you are human and that there are other people that are just like you, fighting the exact same fight, that are looking for another human connection.
Yeah. I like that response, especially that last part, because I think it's so important to have that reminder of you are not alone. You know, like you
Yeah.
are not alone. Um, I think that's very important. That theme, that was definitely a huge theme in season two and season three. And, most of the podcast guests, they don't know each other, but that just came out as a theme. And so, I don't know, just because of that, when I hear someone say a theme of "You Are Not Alone," I just gotta applaud that. Because it's so nice to have that reminder, especially like for me, sometimes I can be feeling alone. Some things, but I also like that you chose the topic in general. Like you'll still be human throughout the whole process. Um, for me, I also it's a reminder for me to have grace on myself and to be patient with myself and to understand that like I don't need to be perfect to be worth it. I'm a human being and that's enough to be worth it, to be worthy of love, to be worthy of patience. Um, and like yeah, like have grace on myself. And not beat myself up too much. Um, I don't. I would say I'm a recovering perfectionist. I would say that. I would definitely say that. I learned more about like the root of my quote unquote perfectionism. I was like, wow, that was actually rooted in a lot of trauma, a lot of survival. So yeah, so that's what that topic bring me to when I wrote it down, and that's why I love like guests when they have their own different like perceptions of that topic. But what are your have you ever like I don't know if you maybe struggle with perfectionism, I don't know, or maybe someone you know, or just the idea of perfectionism. Have you ever thought about um perhaps like the nuances or just like the roots that can lead to it? Because I know when it comes to perfectionism, what we at least for me, what I've seen is when you don't get 100 on an assignment and you kind of like beat yourself up or everything has to be perfect, and it's kind of in a sense kind of like glorified but also noticed like, hey, this is perfectionism. um when I first like even found out the idea of perfectionism was when I was in college, because I was like, oh wow, I'm still in college, but when I first started college I was like such a perfectionist, and I never knew that there was more to the story until like 2 years ago.
Interesting. That's interesting. For me, like the term or like the idea of perfectionism has probably been in my lexicon ever since like middle school. So for a while now, and I think I first heard it in the context of an insult. I think it was someone who was calling me a perfectionist and kind of getting like a joking insult, not like like a rib between friends.
Hmm.
Um, because I was taking too much time on an assignment that ultimately wasn't worth the time I was giving it. But um, I consider myself a perfectionist, but I think I've reined it in a whole lot from where it was.
Right.
I do think like most things in life, um, perfectionism can be good in doses.
Hmm.
This is a funny thing to compare it to, but it's almost like the typical seven deadly sins. It's like
Hmm.
being an embodiment of any of those things isn't like necessarily a bad thing in moderation. It's okay to be a
Hmm.
little bit greedy. It's okay to be a little bit prideful. You just can't let it overtake you. And I see
Hmm.
perfectionism as something like that, where it's okay to sort of like have that self-worth and self motivation to do better, to be the best that you can be, to reach to the top.
Hmm.
But it becomes harmful when it starts doing more harm than good. If it starts
Hmm.
keeping you up at night, if it stops you from eating, if it stops you from being able to control yourself.
Hmm.
um, I when I took chemistry, I was enrolled in the class late, outside of my control. This was when I was in high school. This is college chemistry.
Hmm.
And
Shit.
despite me putting down in my registration form, let me take chemistry, they put me in biology. It was a whole mess.
Oh.
And I enrolled in that chemistry class a week late with the worst professor that they had at the campus because I was the only person left that had slots open. And I tried to like go in with an open mind and like even though this professor's rate my professor is really really bad, whatever, I'm gonna go through it. But that first week, I got chewed out because I didn't turn in an assignment that got assigned while I wasn't in the class, and I was never able to turn it in. It was a simple syllabus assignment, just like signing a form that said you understood the syllabus and blah 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 blah. But it was worth 10% of the final grade in the class. So I immediately could only ever get a 90 in that class.
Yeah.
So that means the entire time, as someone who had won an A, I was walking on razor's edge.
Yeah.
I ended that class with a B. I got an 86 in that class. If I was able to turn in that syllabus form, I would have gotten a 96.
Yeah.
I was I was devastated. When I had to take the midterm for that class, I literally couldn't eat 24 hours before because I was so shaky and so nervous that I was going to screw it up.
Yeah.
Because I'd have to get 100 on every single assignment up to that point. And, you know, thinking about it now, for 3-4 years later, maybe a little less, it's kind of funny because it's like, I'm not thinking about college chemistry every single day. I'm not beating myself over it. My world did not end. A meteor did not fall. I have not needed to find the chemical or molecular composition of an element, at gunpoint.
Chemistry
It's
stuff.
fine.
Ooh, my head hurts hearing that. I was like, whoa, molecular and what? It's like, what? What's that? But yeah, continue. Sorry.
Oh man. I have had to find entropy though. That's a different thing. Screw entropy. But these things came and went, and my understanding of them is still solid. But I wasn't able to showcase that on a piece of paper. So it was like this double-edged sword where I felt like, shit, am I bad at chemistry? And like, shit, I'm a bad student. But that's gone since then. With time, looking back on it, it seems very childish. It seems like it's something that got in the way of myself. If I wasn't so focused on getting a perfect 100 on every single assignment, I may have been able to retain more of that information. I may have been able to score higher because I wouldn't be so racked by nerves. Yeah. It is sort of like this balancing act where perfectionism can bring good things, but it can also sort of like overrule you. So you need to have to keep it in check.
Yeah. I like how you said that, because once upon a time, perfectionism did used to serve me. It used to serve me. It was well, now I recognize that it was a coping mechanism, but it used to serve me. But like many coping mechanisms, sometimes they will start to not serve us, because we outgrow them, or it's just not working anymore, or it can turn into too much. My perfectionism, I realized, not only was it a symptom of trauma, um, it was also a symptom of survival, and the perfectionism turned into what I call toxic independence. Um, Too independent to where I couldn't be dependent I couldn't be dependent if it was to save my life. And many times, it took me, you know, at a suicide attempt, or me thinking about suicide, for me to, or yeah, for me to be dependent. It took me getting to a point to where things got so bad to where I needed therapy. To where, I mean, in therapy, you don't need things to get bad for you to go to therapy. You don't even have to be going through nothing to get therapy. But what I'm saying is, it took me to get to rock bottom in order for me to what to show myself what dependency looks like. You know, especially within a society that glorifies independence, very capitalist. But let me not go there. Let me not go there. Let me mind my business. I mean, you could go there if you
You
want,
should.
but if I go there, I'm gonna get on this soapbox. I'm telling you, I'm gonna get on this soapbox, and I'm gonna do more damage to myself than good, just because I am now being more aware of capitalism and its role, and it's fresh. It's fresh, and sometimes when I poke that wound too early, it'll do damage to me. So I've talked about capitalism before on this podcast. However, in this PhD program, I've been learning about, there's so much more to capitalism. There's so much more. But anyways, so I've been. It got to a point where one of my classes, I was like, I'm gonna skim part of the reading, because I'm not. I don't think I'm at the place mentally this week to where I can take all that newfound information on. But anyways, but yes, Alejandro, going more into the perfectionism. Yeah, it turned into toxic independence, and it took, you know, me looking at myself and being like, I don't even want to be human. I don't want to be human. I don't want to be human. Um, am I a human being? I don't, and just knowing about what makes humans humans, the ups, the downs, the in betweens. I always, loved others for theirs, but I never loved me for mine's. And then I realized, I was like, where does that come from? Comes from my parents. It comes from being in an environment that only gave me attention or love, even if it was just a little bit, and majority of the time it was just a little bit. It was so conditional. It was never unconditional love. It was so conditional. I wouldn't even call it love. But it took me making 100 on something for me to get recognized in a household that was nothing but abuse. And so I realized, that's where a lot of my perfectionism started. It started as a survival mechanism, because it's just like, if I was perfect, I would get some type of love from the people who were supposed to love me but didn't love me. And mind you, it was just a little bit of love, and it didn't last long at all. At all. But that little bit was better than nothing. I was never given grace, love, or praise for being human. No one came to me and said it's okay to be human. And someone doesn't have to outright say it, but they could show it. The people who were supposed to show that, they never showed it. And so over the years, it just became a survival mechanism. Um, I was always bullied for being gay and stuff like that. However, I was always one of the smartest. And so that was a way to kind of, yeah, that was a way to kind of cope, and get praise, kind of like balance out from all the negative things. I don't know. I mean, I do know, but that's so it's just really interesting, how I'm still even in this journey right now of and I've came so far, but allowing myself to be human through it all. Allowing myself, like, now I'm able to be dependent, and I'm able to tell myself, guess what? If you can't do something on your own, you go ask for help. You go ask for help. It is okay to be dependent. And I also did research on how humans used to be, and how dependency was kind of all we had. That's what got us throughout the years. And I was just like, it's funny how more. Let me be quiet, because that's going to lead to the soapbox of capitalism. But I basically can
I
say now it's okay to be human. And what that word entails, that's okay too. I'm still learning that, learning more about that. Um, that it's okay to be human. And I'm learning I'm learning now, and this journey of learning to be human started, what, 7 months ago? I'm literally giving myself permission to be human. Started 7, 8 months ago, you know, and perfectionism, it definitely got out of it got out of hand. It was not serving me anymore, um, and I thanked it. I thanked perfectionism for loving me enough to get me through. But I told perfectionism, I was like, it's okay to rest now. I got this now. I'm not in that environment of chaos, of unloved, of people telling me I'm not worthy, I don't deserve it, I'm not lovable. I'm not in that environment anymore. And so it's just really interesting how so many things like connect to each other that we would never think. But when I really sat down, I was like, wow, that connects to this. That's why, you know, the healing journey was so slow, or was stagnant, or at a stop. I was like, because there was a missing piece that I needed to get to. Something so different connected to it. I was like, wow. So yeah. And so we're learning that. But That's what I love. Anyways, do you have any thoughts on that or no? What's happening there?
Yes, yes. Um, I think it's interesting to root this conversation of humanity and like the what it means in perfectionism and sort of while you were talking, and especially because you brought up capitalism,
Oh, you know I had
it
to.
made me think about like the roots of the roots of my own perfectionism. And for me, it's always been academic. I've always wanted to be perfect academically. um,
Hmm.
and for me, the always root of that was
Same.
having the means and the funds to pay for college and to succeed in
Hmm.
life, to be a quote unquote successful person. That's what's always driven me to get good grades, make sure I attend school, take good notes, do the homework well, ask teachers questions, get on their good sides, etc., etc., because of the economic stratification and the barriers to entry for higher education.
For those of us who
That
don't know what economic
in
stratification is, can you enlighten us a little bit?
Yeah, of course, economic stratification in a term of phrase, I guess you could say, is sort of like the class system. So
Hmm.
it's like the lower class, the working class, middle class, upper class, and then the elite is, those are like the five mainish categories, if you will. Um, and as a kid, as a um, you know even now as an adult, I guess you could say, I've been a member of the working class through and through. Lucky enough to always have a roof over my head and food on my plate, but when bills came, there was always like a sigh of like, oh, okay, here we go again, having to like pay these bills, or I guess we can go fix the car next month instead of this month, things like that.
Hmm.
So I always knew that for school and stuff, I would have to fund it myself. And no, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But it's the fact that if I wasn't able to fund it by myself, I wouldn't be able to attend school, that I find, a problem that I think is something that needs to, I guess, be addressed. Sort of this intersection where it forces people like myself, I guess you could say, to be worried about this, to be having this idea of needing to be perfect. Ever since I was in elementary school, really, I've had this idea of I need to do well in school to eventually get into a good college, to get a good job, to get a
Hmm.
good career, to have a happy life.
Yes.
And it's just sort of seeing the ways in which the forces of um, capital accumulation, the hoarding of wealth, essentially,
Oh yeah.
makes it so that 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds are thinking about these things all the way in their future, whereas
Right.
there's people who are born with silver spoons in their mouths
Hmm.
that don't.
Hmm.
There's people that are the sons, daughters, or children of billionaires or millionaires that never had to worry a day in their lives about school because whatever ended up happening to them, they'd find success.
Yeah.
And I think this sort of leads into the next question pretty well. But you know, in a way, I guess you could say that capitalism, or like this need to be competitive, removes your humanity, and it's something to remember that you always have. That no matter what situation you find yourself in, even if a system is saying that you yourself aren't human, that's false. If you're listening to this right now, if you can't hear this, you're human, so don't worry about it.
Yes, Alejandro. And yeah, woo, yep. Capital. The thing is, I'm not. Okay, so I'll say this, and then I'll like delve a little bit into it. I feel like, at least in my experience, I feel like capitalism, in a sense, kind of took my parents away from me. It wasn't just capitalism, but it was capitalism definitely influenced, you know, my parents prioritizing wealth and money over their own child's life, and one thing that my I won't go there, but it's just, and I say I won't go there just because I already talked about it in other podcasts, but yeah, I think I feel like capitalism has killed a lot of people. Not saying like directly, but more so like kind of indirectly. Um,
Can be both. I mean,
it really, honestly, you're right. In a way, yeah, it actually can. It actually can. It is actually, but something that I started this journey about 3 years ago of really like just diving, I mean, so deep into areas of my life and things of my life that I didn't have or that was taken from me and the why behind it. Um, and I see capitalism in it a lot. But that's the thing. Let me just go back to the parents thingy. It wasn't just capitalism. I mean, they were. My father was just an abusive, corrupt individual to begin with. He just was, and he really just was. I mean, I don't have parents. That's what I say. I just don't. I don't have that a luxury um, of having parents. Never known what that felt like, you know. But it's just on the topic of capitalism. It's just interesting to see how capitalism can play a part in certain dynamics, personal dynamics. Does it make sense? It's interesting.
yeah,
I
for
was like,
sure.
wow, these things really go really deep. Okay, now, oh, I am so excited to hear your response on this next topic, which is also a question. Are we more good than bad? What?
I would. This may be like a rebuking of the framing a little bit, but
Yes, do it. It's vulnerability time. Yes, tear that question apart.
um, I think humans are in fact more good than bad, and I would actually go so far as to say that humans are naturally good, that we as a species are good, are positive, and I would, I guess, a little shout out to my 10th grade English teacher, Mr. Haddix, and a friend of mine on a trip back to from a competition. We had this super long conversation, the three of us, about the, I guess, inherent morality of humans. And it was like maybe 90 minutes. And it was this idea that we were having that I believe that humans are naturally good. And I think the difficult thing or the difficult part of expressing or elaborating on that idea is that there are so many counterexamples that you can give, a million and one counterexamples that disprove what I say. But I think ultimately those counterexamples are exceptions to the rules, and those are the examples that are simply elevated to make what I believe not be true, if that makes sense. I guess sort of what I'm getting at is that um, the economic systems that be capitalism make it so that we lose that bit of humanity, as we discussed, but also it does that insofar as it makes us forget the goodness that we all have, that we all carry, that we all share. That we hear about the bad much more than we do about the good. Um, like to give an extremely recent example, a couple hours ago, as of the recording of this, the party that just won the German national election was a party that sent out pamphlets that said, along the lines, trans people should exist, billionaires should not. This idea of hope, of change, of protection, of unity is an idea that won. And that's not the case all over the world, of course. America is a prime example of that. But
Yeah.
I think even people that voted for Donald Trump or Republican candidates, I do think there is a sense within them that what they're doing is good, and we can have a discussion of whether or not that's the case. But I think if you sit with one, if you sit down with one of them and you talk them through it and you can have a level conversation, which is hard, admittedly, but it's hard for a lot of people, not just, um, conservatives or Republicans, but I think you can see that, their concerns are probably the same as yours. They're concerned about their family, their health, their community, um, their ability to get groceries, their ability to live. And they just see, these policies that are, I'll be blatant evil as the way to do that. And they don't necessarily know otherwise, that they aren't given the truth of that being not the case. And I just sort of think that ultimately, sort of like how you were discussing when you said that you did research on, people in the past, that humans are communal. We aren't designed to be individualistic machines that survive on their lonesome, but rather people that work best in tandem when working together in a group. This is a very stupid example, and it may be like outside of the purview of many of the people that are listening, but this is the example that sort of got through with my friend of, like, if you're playing a game, like a board game or like a multiplayer game, working together, you all can accomplish so much more, so much faster than if you tried to do what you tried to do by yourself. Be it like building a structure or like even like building a Lego set, doing that is much easier if you have someone else doing it right alongside you. If you have a whole team working on it, you can get it done much faster than if you're doing it by yourself. We are meant to work together and to lift ourselves up. And I think humanity has always been at odds with itself of, falling into that trap of wanting to protect yourself before you protect the people around you. And I think ultimately, even though we may not see it in our lifetimes, our children's lifetimes, our children's children's lifetimes, that eventually we will find a point where the world cares more about itself as like the world than the personal. That we care more about the other than we care about the ones that are closest.
Yeah. And that's really interesting because, that was such a common theme in human history in the past. Now we might not have been taught that, of, hey, guess what, community is important, but that's how we survived. And now we're in this so modern way of conditioning of that the individual, so individualistic. And I think individualism is killing us. I think it is just,
Completely agree.
yeah, individualism is killing us. We need each other. We need each other. We cannot do it on our own. We are not supposed to do it on our own. We don't have to do it on our own. Just because you can doesn't mean you have to, and I would say that just because you can do something on your own, I think there is limitations that don't exist if you've done it with others, if we do things together. So I was just like, yeah, you may be able to go some distance by yourself, but we can go so much further together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The best things that exist in this world are the things that do the most good, I guess you could say, if you could like quantify them on a scale, are the things that were done communally, things that were done as a group effort. Even going back to like the existence of farming and the fact that we can feed billions of people across the world because of the ability to farm. The first farms were communal, and even now the farms that exist today are farms that are run by multiple people, not just one. And the farms that are failing and the farms that aren't doing well are the ones that seek to go against that idea, that seek to hold too much land to one person, or don't hire enough people, or hire people that they aren't treating well and aren't treating as a communal equal. There are an infinite amount of cases that showcase that we have the capacity to do good. It's just that we are taught, especially now, otherwise.
Right.
We are focused on individualism, And I'm not saying individualism is bad or like doing things by yourself is evil. You know, it's not like you can
Right.
drive a car with one person's foot on the brake and the other person's on the gas. Like, no. Like that's silly.
Right.
But, you know, buses, for instance, accomplish a more communal way of travel.
Yeah.
Trains as well. Airplanes, well, maybe it's a bad example, but
It makes sense.
looking at things that you do by yourself, by your lonesome, there are ways in which they can be changed or ways in which they can be accomplished communally.
Yeah.
That would do good.
Yes. I agree. I love that. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I know we're running out of time, but Alejandro, I want to thank you so much. I would like to challenge everyone right now to text someone. I'll do it too. To text someone, anybody, that they are grateful for them. I challenge everyone to text one person um, by the end of today. Or do it now, or by the end of today. Alrighty. With that being said, this has been another episode of Vulnerability Time. Thank you so much, Alejandro, for coming on. This has been great. Okay, bye everyone. See you next episode. Yes. See y'all next episode for whatever that may be. Because I don't know, because I haven't recorded it yet. But we will find out, won't we?